Deep down inside, almost everyone in this world has the same desire: to do what one wants whenever they choose to and not have to worry about anyone or anything else. However, the world doesn't work this way. There are repercussions to our behavior. Maybe these teens' only fear is getting caught by their parents. But what if all fear is relinquished? The fear of authority, overriding morals, or ultimately, the fear of death. History shows 5 men whose deviant nature had proved to be so strong it is hard to believe they had any inclination of fear in their body. These are the 5 most notorious gangsters to ever walk the earth. Number 5. Carlo Gambino. Born in 1902 Sicily, Italy, Gambino was brought up into a prosperous and well-syndicated family. Carlo grew up in a city so dominated by the honored society that it was off limits to even the police and military. Sheltered by the mafia, many of Carlo's relatives were deeply entrenched within the organization, depicting at a young age that wealth and power was everything a man could ever want. Carlo showed superior intelligence, the kind of intelligence needed to pull off a major crime. He had demonstrated his shrewdness by moving to New York and making his first $1 million through selling stolen and counterfeit ration stamps. Carlo's trademark was his meek physical demeanor, accented by a hawk-beak nose and his polite grandfatherly way. He preferred to work things out with his enemies, but would not hesitate to have some clipped when they stood in his way. By the age of 50, Carlo invested in a broad range of businesses, legally and illegally, with the money that he had made throughout his criminal career. Amongst the fame and fortune, family was everything to Carlo. Carlo was known as a man that would take a bullet to those that he was loyal to, and when a group of Irish thugs kidnapped and killed Carlo's nephew, he put out a contract to seek vengeance. The contract went to a rising tough guy by the name of John Gotti. Number 4. John Gotti. John Gotti was born in the Bronx, New York in 1940, and like Gambino was raised in a life surrounded by organized crime. By the age of 21, Gotti pursued a life full of crime on a full-time basis. Gotti had been arrested 5 times for accounts of street fighting, public intoxication, and car theft, but served very little jail time. On March 6, 1962, John got married to 17-year-old Victoria DiGiorgio, the mother of his 2 children. At this time, Gotti briefly tried his hand at a legitimate job for the sake of his family. However, John Gotti quickly realized the amount of fortune he was giving up through his prior illegal operations. Unable to flee the world of organized crime, he committed his first murder in May of 1973 when he shot and killed Jimmy McBratney, a rival gang member. Gotti was less than discreet, leaving trails of evidence along with multiple witnesses at the scene of the crime. He was thereafter arrested in 1974 and served only 4 years in prison after cutting a deal in court. After Gotti had gotten out of prison, he had become a prominent member within the Gambino family, and soon to be boss after Castellano was gunned down while eating at a steakhouse. Gotti had become something of a local hero, an icon throughout the world. As the whole world became infatuated with John, he also caught the eye of federal agents, who gathered enough evidence to indict Gotti with life imprisonment. Number 3. Pablo Escobar. Born in 1949, Pablo Escobar's life of crime began at a very early age. While still in school, he had stole tombstones and sold them to smugglers from Panama. In the early 70s, he entered the cocaine trade, where his ambition and ruthlessness would make him one of the most wealthiest, powerful, and violent criminals of all time. Under his leadership, large amounts of cocoa paste were purchased, processed, and brought to the United States. Controlling over 80% of the cocaine shipped to America, Escobar collaborated with 6 other illegal entrepreneurs from the Medellin area, forming the infamous Medellin cartel. Escobar's rise to prominence among Colombian drug traffickers is said to have attributed to personal characteristics, influential ties, and a wise use of financial resources. However, not without the expense of many lives, as 3 presidential candidates, attorney generals, a justice minister, more than 200 judges, and more than 100 police officers had lost their lives through Escobar's reign. Pablo had died at the age of 44 as he was shot to death by members of a special police unit in 1993. As shown by this picture, it was a joyous day to many. Number 2. Charles Lucky Luciano. Charles Luciano was born in Sicily, Italy on November 24, 1897. At the age of 9, the man known as Lucky moved to New York with his family, not able to speak a lick of English. Luciano struggled in school, preferring to learn about how to make it on the streets of New York's Lower East Side. He also managed to start his budding criminal career, dealing drugs, which led to 6 months of reformatory for the crime. Lucky didn't stop there. After being released, he had created large illegal business opportunities through the 1920 prohibition of alcohol, capitalizing on bootlegging, which dominated the illegal liquor trade on the East Coast. In 1929, Luciano lived up to his nickname Lucky, surviving a savage attack. He was abducted by a group of men who beat and stabbed him, left for dead on a beach in Staten Island. Lucky's near-death experience only made him hungrier, as he had shortly after risen to power as top boss, taking over as a leader of one of the city's 5 families. Unfortunately for Luciano, Salvatore Maranzano, a rival boss, viewed him as a threat in order to hit on him. However, Lucky was able to strike first, having his men take out Maranzano in his office in September 1931. After decades of successful legal operations, Luciano's luck ran out in 1936, as he was convicted and sentenced to 30 to 50 years of jail time for extortion and prostitution. While in prison, Luciano offered to help the war effort during World War II, using his criminal connections in Italy to advance the Allies' cause. After the war, Luciano received parole and was later deported to Italy. Luciano considered sharing the inside details of his life story over the years, and in an odd twist of fate, he suffered a fatal heart attack at Naples Airport in January 1962. At the time, Luciano was there to meet with a film and television producer. Number 1. Al Capone. Born on January 17, 1899, Capone was raised in a respectable, educated, professional family, a formula that is thought to reek few indications that young Al Capone would venture into a world of crime and become public enemy number 1. However, it was Capone's schooling, not adequate and brutal at a Catholic institution, beset with violence, that married the impressionable young man, despite being a promising young student. Capone was expelled at the age of 14 for hitting a female teacher. After that day, he never went back to school again. It was then Capone met gangster Johnny Torrio, who would prove to be the greatest influence on the would-be gangland boss. Torrio represented a new dawn in the criminal enterprise, teaching Capone the importance of maintaining a respectable front while running a racketeering business. Capone had followed Torrio to Chicago, where he would then soon become the crime car of the city, running gambling, prostitution, bootlegging rackets, while expanding his territories by the gunning down of rival gangs. The budding question is, what had caused Capone to spiral into the ruthless, inhumane being that he had become? The unexpected death of Capone's father was a turning point. It is believed that the sudden freedom from parental influence was the reason he stopped trying to maintain a law-abiding, respectful lifestyle. Capone's status continued to rise, and through the kidnapping of his opponent's election workers and threats to voters, he eventually won office in Cicero. Although Capone was creating an empire for himself through most illegal operations, he had to deal with rival gangsters, Bugs Moran and his North Side Gang. On February 14, 1929, Bugs Moran and his gang were lured by bootleggers into a garage to buy whiskey. At this point, Capone's men would be waiting for them, dressed in stolen police uniforms, the idea being that they would stage a fake raid. The bootleggers caught in the act lined up against the wall as Capone's men opened fire on them with 2 machine guns. The plan appeared to go brilliantly, except for one major detail. Bugs Moran was not among the dead. Even though Al Capone did not participate in the massacre, the police and newspapers knew who staged the event. The massacre became a national media event, immortalizing Capone as the most ruthless, feared, smartest, and elegant of gangland bosses.